You live in a world where you believe what you see and trust what you know. And I did too, when I was alive. But I see different things now, in the dark, on the other side, through a passage that you'll make too one day. If our stories are strange to you and you feel a chill at the edge of understanding, then you're lucky. Because we haven't told you the worst yet.
This is not just a fantasy. Something's in that house.
Within a month after us moving in here, Devin started talking to his ghost friends.
The evil presence is definitely in the neighborhood.
I encountered an entity.
There are a number of spirits that still linger in this home.
There's bodies here. They haven't found them.
I was a skeptic. I don't believe I'm a skeptic anymore.
And nor will you be when we show ourselves. Believe or don't, it makes no difference to us. We know what we are and where we are. And sooner or later, so will you.
We came to the port about 11 years ago.
We had been house hunting quite a while, and we finally found this house. We come out and look.
We drove by and I was like, oh my God, it's like a huge yard that my kids can play in. I mean, the second I walked in the door, it was just like, I had to have this house.
As we're looking, the realtor pulls me off to the side, and she tells me that, I need to tell you about who used to live in this house. She asked me if I knew who Belle Gunness was.
When we moved here, Devin wasn't even in preschool yet. They always say children at his age can see what adults don't.
When I was around 5 years old, I used to talk to a ghost that would hang out by the woods.
I asked him, Devin, who are you talking to? And he said, the killer ghost.
I grew up with very little, and I learned early how important it was to have more than everyone else. When I lived here, I took what I wanted. And after I died, there was no way they could drive me away. I never bothered with children much. They never liked me. But now, here in this between place, it's the children I rely on. They're the ones that can hear me the best. I owned all the land around here, as far as anyone could see. I spent almost 10 years building my farm. A little here, a little there, and whenever I could, I'd buy a little more. But after I was gone, they broke it apart, gave what was mine to people who had no right.
All of McClung Road, every house that sits on McClung Road is built on Belle Gunness's property because she owned it all in the early 1900s. Within a month after us moving in here, Devin started talking to his ghost friends.
They were telling me things like what happened to them, about how they died or where they died.
What are you talking about?
The ghost in the car, he wasn't like a real person. He was a silhouette of a man that used to be here.
Let's go inside.
All I want to do is get in the house. And Devin starts screaming.
I was scared that the silhouette man was locked in the car. He said that he would hurt my mother if anything happened to him.
And then he finally just stops. And he's looking at the door. He goes, "You're right, Mom. He's right there."
There are others here too. I brought them, and then made them part of the farm.
Don't ever hurt him. Your ghost will hurt you.
That boy's no fool. If some grown men had that kind of sense, well, things might have turned out different for them. They can buy and sell this property 100 times over, but they'll never really own it. This place belongs to just one person, me.
The render house is new, but built over the same foundation as the original Belle Gunness house that burnt down in 1907.
What she did with all the property then, I don't know. I know what she did in my basement.
She was just an evil person, greedy for money. She didn't care about anybody else's life. Back in 1908, it was found that she had murdered and buried 13 people on her farm.
13's the number people say, and I still laugh, because no one really knows all of what I got up to here.
I believe the property is cursed. I believe the neighborhood is cursed. The evil presence is definitely in and around the neighborhood. I have lived at the house almost 59 years. My parents bought the house before I was 2. Nice place to raise your children. I was 20. That is when it all started. Totally dark evening. I saw a white image, very detailed. It was almost like a photograph looking at me. It was Belle Gunness.
I knew the murders happened on this property. I felt they very much needed to be investigated. I'm a lead investigator with Midwest Paranormal. We approach it from the skeptical point of view and let the evidence dictate which direction we go in.
I always was able to bring the men running, and now they come without me even asking. It's almost too easy. And I keep trying ways to get back to what I know best.
There's such a mystery wrapped around Belle Gunness. You know, it just seems like there's a melancholy about the property that's always tended to be here. You know, we wanted to try to see if there was some EVP evidence or something like that that could take us in some directions where there's been some dead ends. EVP is electronic voice phenomenon. They may not be audible to our ears, but they will show up on a recorder.
If I can make myself heard, I might just be able to figure out how to do other things too.
Belle did respond in our recordings. She did say her full name. She was, "I'm Belle Gunness."
After we finished in the basement, we come upstairs and Lori says, while you guys are downstairs, I heard a voice.
All of a sudden, it's a woman's voice. And I heard the hi right here in the room, and then it showed up on 2 recorders.
From the evidence that we've caught, I believe that obviously Belle's here. I believe that there are a number of spirits that still linger in this property and in this home.
Belle had been in LaPorte about a year. In 1902, she became reacquainted with a man named Peter Gunness. They'd been together about a month, and they decided to get married. About 8 months later, one day Peter supposedly had come into the house from being outside. He bumped the stove. This also caused a sausage grinder to fall off of a shelf behind him.
I kept telling Peter to fix that thing. It had been loose for months. It was bound to hurt someone someday. Such a shame. A terrible tragedy. That's what the police called it when I explained to them what had happened. Men can be so careless sometimes, don't you think? They need a woman looking out for them. It's a powerful feeling knowing that everything around you is yours, that no one can take it from you. Property means money, and money means power. I learned that in the old country. When I came here, I made this farm my home, mine and only mine. And anyone who came after me, well, I let them know they're not welcome. My name was Belle Gunness. I always had a way to get what I wanted.
I think she's back on the property, haunting it, and that bad spirits, hers included, are angry and they like inflicting pain.
I could make some of them hear my voice, and I could show some others the things I had inside.
At the top of our property, my son spray painted a tree and wrote Murder Hill and said, "This is for Belle."
Some were in a dark place of their own, and they sought me out.
My son took his own life. Could not talk him out of it. My only child. He said, "I'm going to Murder Hill."
After my poor husband met his unfortunate end, the insurance company was nice enough to pay me, his grieving widow. It was then I knew I found just what I was looking for.
She's evil. She very much knew what she was doing. She was able to manipulate insurance companies into giving her money for murder.
And then, like any good hunter knows, it was just a matter of baiting the trap.
She put ads in Norwegian language newspapers in the Midwest. And these ads said, "A woman with a beautifully located and valuable farm wants to meet a man who is good and reliable, who would like to become a partner in her farm."
These fools, they'd show up with their money, thinking they would be able to buy me and my affections. Well,
So, did you bring the money?
I took their money and more.
Once these men started to come to LaPorte, they were only here as a matter of days, maybe a week at the most, and they disappeared.
The men that courted me hoped they could stay with me forever, and I made sure they did. There certainly were a lot of them. It got so as I had to keep finding new spots to make all of my visitors comfortable. I wouldn't want to be accused of being a bad hostess.
She learned about the life insurance, and it didn't matter who died or how that person died. All she wanted was their money.
I was just looking around, kind of doing my own thing, and happened to look down at the right time at the right spot.
He says, "Mom, you're not gonna believe what I found." And he's just holding these false teeth.
It was really weird because I didn't know that it would just surface.
They're not store-bought fake teeth, you know, like the vampire teeth or whatever. These actually used to belong and were in somebody's mouth. You know, it came from then, you know, from the early 1900s, and somebody could have had false teeth that she killed.
Well, we all leave things behind when we go. Some last longer than others. Some you just have to get rid of. One of the things my unfortunate suitors left me with were too many mouths to feed.
And she was now left with 4 foster children at this point. She had Jenny Olson, she had Myrtle and Lucy Sorensen, and she also had now little Philip Gunness.
Children had a way of making one vulnerable. But I was always clever, and eventually I found a way to make the children useful, to have them do some of the work that needed to be done. You see, my last gentleman caller had a brother who was making life difficult, asking questions that were only my business. People were starting to talk and think a little too much about what was happening on my land. I needed to step away for a time, a sabbatical, if you will. But no one could come with me, or after me.
It is widely believed that Belle Gunness did murder her children to cover her escape.
And the new charwoman I had hired turned out to be a bigger help than I had originally anticipated.
Along with a servant that she hired from Chicago area.
Let me show you the basement.
She was more petite than I was, but most women were. Good enough. And I had seen people turn a blind eye to what was in front of them for years. I wasn't worried.
She actually hired the servant, decapitated her, tried to make it look like it was her body in the basement of the house with the children.
Sticks and stones and all the bones. But they would never catch me. They say that fire is a living thing. If that's true, do you think it has a memory too?
So I'm calling my husband, and the phone's busy. And so then I try calling his cell phone, and he finally picks up his cell phone. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm standing in the driveway talking to firemen because the basement caught on fire.
After they put out the fire, and the last corner of the basement is where they found a female body, and right by were 3 children. The mysterious thing was that the woman's body had no head.
When they told us that the fire was spontaneous combustion, I questioned it. That's the only time I've ever heard of spontaneous combustion. And I'm sorry, but the history of the house and spontaneous combustion.
One little lick of flame and the town comes running. In my day, we wouldn't have even called that a fire. Just a gesture, a hint of things to come. Well, a woman has to keep a bit of a mystery about her, because that's not the end of my story at all. I learned early that the more money one has, the more control one has. If you have enough money, you can get away with almost anything. Life insurance companies paid handsomely, as long as you had the bodies to cash in. I'll admit, generating the bodies was difficult, but I was never one to shy away from a little hard work. But all good things must come to an end. And when people started asking too many questions, I knew it was time to cash out. So, as far as anyone knew, I was killed in the fire. Just a poor mother and widow trying to protect her children.
She did give us the name of the person of the body in the fire that was supposedly known as Belle's, and the name keeps coming out as Helena. We asked her if that was her body in the fire. Belle did respond with, I arranged it.
When it got to the point where Belle felt like she was going to be caught, that's when she made her escape. I investigated the Belle Gunness farm. Our team is called WISP. It's an acronym for Witches in Search of the Paranormal. I believe the history of what happened on that property, the amount of bloodshed, it left something so dark and horrific that even a century of time couldn't wash it away.
But you have it wrong, sir. The bloodshed didn't start on the farm. It started many years before.
For some inexplicable reason, I was drawn to investigate the cellar. I just sensed that there might be something down there. Maybe a ghost, maybe some kind of an entity.
Belle, if you're here, make your presence known.
Long ago in Norway, another man showed interest in me. But I was just a young girl. A young girl full with child.
Something pushed me, hit me very hard in the back. It knocked the flashlight out of my hand. It knocked the recorder out of my hand. At that point, all I had was a metaphysical tool called an athame. It's a ritual knife. I use it for spiritual protection, way to focus my energy.
Just like this man with his witch's tool, his knife. That man long ago made his advances.
No longer your property. You need to leave these people in this neighborhood alone.
And when I spurned his advances, he beat me and I lost my child. My child. But he was from a wealthy family. I didn't know it then, but I know it now. Wealth is power. With enough power, you can get away with anything. He was never punished, but from now on, everyone else would be.
I've never felt that threatened before, that frightened before during an investigation. Never been physically attacked like that before. And I encountered an entity, one of the most powerful and darkest entities I have ever encountered in all my time. And I do believe that the entity itself, it was Belle Gunness. I have no doubt about that.
After all the investigation after the fire, besides all these other bodies that were discovered in the farm, I calculate that she killed 22 people altogether. So she got away literally with murder. They realized Belle was responsible for the deaths of all of these people.
There were always a lot of secrets out here at the farm. Maybe no one will ever know them all.
I do believe the energy is negative. There's bodies here. They haven't found them.
Stay outside.
I think they only talked to me because I think they knew that I was the one that they wouldn't really think I would freak out all that much. I mean, because if someone talks to a grown man and they're not real, they're gonna freak out.
I believe that McClung Road, majority of it is beautiful property. We like it here. And I don't know, maybe us painting or doing some changes around the house kind of upsets them sometimes, I don't know. But until we're told to leave, we're gonna stay.
Ignore me or engage me, it doesn't matter. I'm here no matter what. I've always been here.
I was sleeping at 1:30 in the morning. The wind chimes started to chime, and there was no wind in the air.
If you want to know more, you should come and visit. There's nothing I like more than company.
There's an emptiness that's got no shape, no light, no end. And if someone showed you a way out, a door, if someone was a door, then you'd never let them go.
This is the first place I ever lived on my own. I moved into this little small bungalow. I was going to school full-time, and I had a 2-year-old son, and just trying to be a mother. It was a one-bedroom. It was nice and quaint. I just felt safe there.
My name was Herman Hendrickson. I guess you could call me that still. It's hard to say how much of the man I was, I continue to be. But I understand this place, these streets. This house was close to where I met my end, or how I met my end. I can't quite tell.
Stuff started happening, and I felt a presence there, and I can't really explain that. It was watching me, like really, like the eyes on you. It's almost like it was right behind me.
I knew the water well, lived on it nearly all my life. I knew to be afraid of it too, because in the end, the sea will take her price. The sea was the only lady in my living world. Not for lack of trying, but I was young, inexperienced. But in the hereafter, it was a woman that changed everything.
I started hearing stuff up in the attic.
How many years had passed?
It's just mumbling voices. It almost sounded like a distant radio.
How many people had come through this house until finally someone knew that I was here? Someone could finally see.
And one night, I was walking through the kids' room. There was a man sitting on the bed just looking at me. He didn't look like he was alive. His eyes, they were the evilest. I remember talking to myself and saying, okay, he's not gonna be there, look up, he's not there, he's not there. And I looked up and he's still there and he's still just looking at me. There was a lot of people that saw stuff. I lost friends that wouldn't come over to my house because of things that happened to them.
And sometimes, near her, there was a space where other people could see too. All I wanted to do was make myself known. I pushed forward, but most of them just ran away.
There wasn't a time when a few hours would go by without something happening. On one occasion, I'd heard the voices in the attic. I went up there to see what was happening up there.
Sometimes, I could feel the slipping of the air. I could make it come through, a picture or shock of what I was.
Over on the far side, there was something glowing. It started off as just a pinpoint. It was getting bigger and bigger. It had features of the head, and it just came right at me.
Sure, I could make her see a shadow or hear a noise, but I had darker things to tell. A secret that had drowned with me. This is a shipping town, San Pedro by the sea. Fortunes rose and fell with the boats that came in. All I could think of when I was here was making my way and piecing a little money together. But now, I have a want stronger than any I had when I was alive, to be able to tell my secret. And then, a woman came to this place, and she was the first who could begin to see me.
I'm looking around, and I felt something like it was watching me. Over on the far side of the attic, there was something glowing. It started off as just a pinpoint. It was getting bigger and bigger. It had features of the head, and it just came right at me. And my legs gave way. I ran out of the house. I was so terrified. My friend said, here, you gotta call this guy. That's when I called Barry Taft.
I've worked on almost 4,500 cases in the last 44 years. I ended up working at UCLA's parapsychology laboratory, first as a subject. They did a study on me. But I wanted to learn why these things happen to people. Jackie was so worried that we would think she was nuts, she was afraid to call, which is a good indicator, because people don't want to be labeled crazy.
It was like learning a foreign tongue. Slow at first, but once I had a few words, I could start to do more. I was getting stronger.
We go out there, a whole bunch of us. Myself, Jeff Wheatcraft, the professional photographer, a friend of his, and a few other people. I've been involved with parapsychology for 44 years. The chance of your being out at some stranger's home and encountering phenomena while you're there is astronomical. Once in a blue moon, you're there, whatever is there is active, and you're able to observe it and document it in some fashion.
We went into the house. All of a sudden, there was this orange fluorescent stuff everywhere coming out of the walls and everything. It was a physical liquid. It was like a ooze, oozing everywhere.
But my world now, it's not like yours. When the edges seep through, How could you possibly understand?
They took a sample bag and had it analyzed by a forensic lab, and it was human blood plasma. Why is that dripping in a cupboard? We took some boards out, we couldn't explain it. Jeff Wheatcraft thought we were all a little batty. He worked as a photographer and he came along with us to help. He thought, yeah, right, a ghost. And he looked at Jackie first and said, oh, please, give me a break.
I'm one of these guys that really has to see it to believe it.
You could see how skeptical he was just by the look on his face. And so one of the guys said, Jeff, why don't you go up in the attic and take some pictures?
You see people all around you, in rooms, on roads. I see time, years, all the layers. And sometimes there comes a bad face. A face that I'm sure has done me wrong before.
I started shooting this stuff, and all of a sudden, the camera was pulled from my hands. Actually, physically pulled from my hands. I was so scared at that point. This is the first real experience I've had with anything like that.
Jeff came out of the attic, he was shaken. He was white, but it was a ghost, I mean, literally.
Put myself together, and I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, this is an expensive camera. I'm gonna go back there, get that camera. And lo and behold, the camera was actually turned and separated, and it was in two parts of the attic.
Something violently tore his camera out of his hands. Jeff's a professional photographer, so what did that?
This is not just a fantasy created by Jackie Hernandez. Something's in that house.
I was in between these two places now. I was drawing strength from their attention, their belief.
The case evolved from there. Many more visits.
And I was holding on to the ones who believed the most. Who were reaching out across.
Everybody was asking me why I didn't move out of the house. I had absolutely no money, I was barely making it, and that wasn't a choice.
But there was something about her. Her fear was like a light drawing me in. She just felt right. So I made sure to keep her close.
I was pretty scared, and my friend was staying over. I closed my eyes just to rest them for a minute.
And the closer I got, the more she would know.
Something was on me. I couldn't breathe. Something was covering my nose and my mouth, and I could not breathe at all. I was thinking I was going to die.
If I could just get inside her mind and make her understand. It was so real, and I was there with her as close as I could be.
Yeah, that was the scariest.
But that wasn't the way. I went too far. Her fear, so attractive to me, kept her from hearing what I needed her to. But I would keep on trying. I would try anything to get through.
I was sitting in the living room. And all of a sudden, I see this light that just like floated down.
We gave her cameras, and she was shooting. I mean, one of the images she captured was extraordinary.
I got some of the most incredible pictures of these lights that were hovering above the carpet.
It had its own light source. It actually lit up the carpet. And there's no way that she could have fabricated that.
The extraordinary luminous anomaly. They're three-dimensional, they show parallax, they're casting shadows.
I got scared, I got really scared, so I called up Barry. It was around midnight that they showed up, and they had their cameras and everything ready to go.
I was determined to follow this through, to see what was going to happen.
My time isn't like yours. You might say I've been quite patient waiting all these years, but for me, it's infinite and finite all at once. And still, even I have my limits.
I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what are they doing? You know, I just want to get out of here. And they go back up into the attic.
And when I get angry, I can get angry. Oh, I will not be ignored.
I remember thinking, I don't think there's anything up here. Let's head on down. The minute I said that, wham!
If they won't listen, I'll make them listen.
Jeff was actually hanging up there.
He came literally within an inch or two of losing his life.
After coming down and then finding the rope on my neck, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I don't believe I'm a skeptic anymore. This is definitely the scariest thing I've ever gone through. There's no question about it.
I'd gone too far again.
That was the last night that I was there.
She was so scared that she decided she had to go somewhere.
My exact words were, I'm gonna get in the truck and just drive until it runs out of gas. I'll get as far away from here as I possibly can.
She moves up to a place called Weldon. It's near Bakersfield. It's a little trailer park.
You leave a haunted house, you leave the haunted house and the ghosts and everything. I thought, it's over, nothing's here. I left it in San Pedro, it's over, that's part of my life is over.
It wasn't a house I wanted. It was a door. And once I found her, I was never going to let her go. If you follow someone to the ends of the earth, you might call that love. But in my case, you'd be wrong. What I had was a need to tell my secret. So when the one who I knew could hear me tried to run away, I followed her. See, we weren't done yet.
We were like 20 miles away from the nearest police station. The nearest phone was 7 miles away. We were at the end of a dirt road. I called up Barry and was telling him, hey, things are happening.
Banging noises. And that's why Jeff and other people went out there to investigate it.
When our crew first went up there, the shed out back, there was some activity there with some pounding that took place.
And I locked the shed. And that night, all night long, there was somebody was banging on the door with a fist. You just hear it echoing. I was in my bed, curled up in a ball, wondering what was going to happen next.
So whatever this was actually followed her up there.
In that new place, nothing was different. They want to capture me, to see me, to understand me. But they don't know anything. They are trapped in their bodies on this plane. How could they possibly understand?
We still haven't got what we want. I still want to figure out what this is. So I set up a Panasonic VHS on a tripod in back, pointed at that shed, and while we were there, I just rolled tape.
We were watching it through the bay window in the back of the trailer, and all of a sudden this tripod unscrews and turns around and starts filming us.
Later on, when we checked on that tape, there was nothing on it.
But I would keep reaching now. Anywhere. With anyone who was trying to listen.
The following night, we came back to Gary's apartment just to look at footage. In the apartment, things started to happen. It had lit the flames on the stove. So it was determined that whatever this was followed us there.
There was a flurry of psychokinetic activity. When you talk about objects appearing and disappearing, cabinets being opened and closed, things being thrown around, that's poltergeist.
We went back to the living room, and the chairs were sitting on top of the table.
The evidence today suggests that it's an extension of us, of living human beings, and there's no instrument on earth that can measure it. because we don't know what that force is.
We decided, and I decided, like, I want to pursue this. Maybe this is the last big blowout. So we set up the table in the trailer.
Until now, it had been static. Noise, anger with no beginning and no end. And then, these people offered a way through. It was a witch's tool. The board both sides could make sense of. The woman and the others were all here, and finally, a chance to speak, to be understood. Oh, it had been a long time since I talked to the living. So I told them my name, Herman Hendrickson. They asked if I had enemies. I spelled out the name of the one with the bad face, the one with the camera, J-E-F-F.
They answered in full sentences, complete sentences. It was unreal.
They asked me when I died. I told them 1930. I was a sailor when I drowned in San Pedro. Then they asked me how I died. I gave up my secret to them then. I needed them to know what had happened to me. I came back to the sea. A true sailor always answers her siren's call. But it wasn't her dark depths that got me in the end. It was a man that put me there, stole my life, murdered. I was dead, but my killer went on to live his life, a full life, in that house, in the port town, the one with the attic.
In terms of Jackie, whatever this entity was, it was attached to the house, but it became attached to her.
My life wasn't rich or famous or important, but it was mine. And he ripped it away, before I'd had a chance to do much of anything with it. Telling my story again, I felt the anger like it had just happened. Too much for any man.
And that is when I was picked up by this gush of air.
It was like he was slugged right in the chest, and he went back.
It was just like a 6-foot boxing glove that hit me from the table.
Jeff was knocked out cold.
Jackie and everyone thought Jeff was dead.
I thought that I saw a murder. I didn't want to be in that house. I started a bonfire outside. I burned the table, the chairs, the Ouija board, anything that thing came in contact with, I threw it all in this big fire. I never considered myself a very strong person. I had to be there, otherwise I wouldn't have gotten through it.
Jackie's a brave lady. Her life was literally torn asunder.
She just happened to be the unfortunate one that moved into that house.
The case eventually moved away and was displaced.
I was stuck in that place for so many years, until finally a woman came who could hear me. After I made them know the truth, I could leave and go somewhere that even the witch board can't find.